Every alibi ticks, like a clock steady and certain, but tonight one disappears. Welcome to Elara Yselles, Crime Stories, where fast crimes leave lasting chills. Our case begins with the vanishing alibi. Detective Jasmine Brooks sat at her desk, the glow of her monitor softening the edges of the room. Outside, rain tapped gently on the window, giving the city a sheen of silver. The sound threaded itself throughout the office, a quiet metronome keeping pace with the clock. Brooks chronicled her cases the way a seamstress works a stitch, carefully, steadily, and precisely. She lined her pens across the desk in order of ink level, as though even the smallest details deserved their place in sequence. Files towered at her side, spines labeled in the same practiced hand. Her brow tightened as she read. The neat lines of her report refused to fall in order. Something slipped between the sentences, small enough to vanish, large enough to matter. She tapped her pen once, twice, listening to the hollow echo on the wood. The phone on her desk blinked silently, its message light waiting. Brooks ignored it. She preferred silence. It carried more truth than a dozen hurried voices. Still, silence could be deceptive. Some nights it spoke in riddles, and she could feel one forming now. Most nights, the pattern held. Witnesses aligned, timelines clicked into place, and the truth moved with the ease of clockwork. But some nights, the fabric shifted. Timelines overlapped, alibis pressed against each other, and the silence grew heavier than words. She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, rain painting faint shadows across the plaster. A case always began the same way, with something that did not fit, and tonight that something was already here, waiting for her to name it. Claire Merritt's apartment looked too well kept for death. Cushions aligned, books unruffled, every surface polished. Only one flaw, a wine glass tipped on the floor, its stains spreading like ink across pale boards. Brooks bent to examine the spill, the faint scent of Merlot lingering like perfume, while Detective Rourke lingered in the doorway. Rourke stood like a man listening for music only he could hear, his patience set to a slower rhythm than hers. The room carried layers of quiet. A clock ticked faintly, stubborn against the silence. A candle burned on the counter, its flame wavering, the wax tracing restless lines down its side. Everything was orderly, but not peaceful. The air felt unsettled, as if it remembered someone who had left too quickly. Brooks' fingers brushed against the glass stem, her mind tracing not the accident, but the choice. The glass had been lifted, sipped, and set down with trust. Only then had it been tipped, its red heart spilling across the pale boards. Rooms speak in patterns. This one whispered of order interrupted, but not broken. Whoever had entered had not forced their way in. Brooks stepped out of Claire's apartment into the hallway. A low voice from behind her said, "Excuse me." A woman stood outside of her own door, one hand resting against her chest as though steadying her breath. Her sweater hung loose at the wrist, her expression cautious but intent. She kept her voice low, as if the walls themselves might still be listening. Through plaster and paint, she had heard Claire's voice rise the night before. "Marcus Hill, what are you doing here?" She hadn't seen anyone, only the name carrying sharp through the wall like a crack of glass. The woman shifted uneasily, the memory unsettling her more than its retelling. Marcus Hill sat across from Brooks in the interrogation room, Posture easy, expression calm. He looked more suited to a diner table than a still chair. Marcus wore composure like a tailored suit, neat, practiced, rehearsed. His cufflinks gleamed, his tie sat flawless, as though the setting itself bowed to his confidence. Brooks studied him with the patience of a chess player, searching for the first misplaced move. He smiled too quickly, answered too smoothly, each gesture stitched carefully into place. The door opened. His lawyer entered briskly and handed a USB to Brooks. It will show Marcus appearing in a lounge with friends, glass in hand, timestamp fixed like stone. The metal on the USB flickered in the warm light as Marcus left with his attorney. Brooks leaned forward, her gaze cutting through the glow. An alibi too polished, too still. Confidence, when rehearsed, too often begins to sound like a line repeated. She let the silence stretch, the hum of the fluorescent light filling the room. Silence unsettles the polished more than questions ever could. And Marcus Hill, for all his charm, was already repeating himself. Brooks sat at her desk, watching the hours of footage of Marcus at the lounge. There was no audio, so Brooks directed her attention to all the little visual details. Without sound, the footage revealed more gestures too stiff, the trio repeating the same laughs and taking the same sips. A performance wrapped in pixels. Patterns are loyal companions. They never lie. Even when the picture insists it is whole, the smallest repeat will betray the truth. She leaned close, and then closer. At the edge of the frame, a waitress's elbow flickered. 14 minutes later, it flickered again, identical and misplaced in time. Brooks scribbled notes, noting the timestamp needed to be analyzed. Somewhere between the polished surface and the fractured loop, Marcus Hill's alibi began to fray. She looked out the window, the clouds outside punctuating the silence. Lies often dress themselves in polish, but polish cracks the moment someone looks too closely. The living room carried a lived-in quiet, soft light throughout the windows, books stacked unevenly, a blanket draped across the arm of a chair. Brooks took a seat where she could watch the doorway, her notebook balanced against her knee. Kai sat across from her, long hair framing his face, his posture steady, his hands folded in his lap as though anchored there. His voice carried no hesitation. Marcus had asked him to lie if the police came around. He had refused. He did not know Claire, and he would not bend the truth for Marcus Hill. His words landed with the weight of stone, firm, unshaken. Later, Brandon sat in the same chair, his shoulders drawn tight, fingers restless against his knees. Brooks let silence stretch between them, knowing silence unsettles faster than questions. Brandon's eyes shifted, then his voice broke the gap. He admitted Marcus had asked the same of him. He spoke nervously, but the words held no deceit. He would not lie, even if loyalty pulled at him. Brooks set their testimony side by side, one voice steady, one strained, both pointing towards the same truth. Marcus Hill's alibi was not real. It was rehearsed. She made a quiet note to herself. Loyalty bends differently under silence. Some hold fast, others falter, and Marcus had asked the wrong men to stay silent. By the time Brooke stepped back out into the gray light of the street, her phone buzzed with a message from the precinct. Marcus's cell tower records were ready. She turned her stride towards the forensic office, evidence tightening its net one thread at a time. In the forensics office, machines hummed low, spooling evidence into light. A technician, Jennifer, handed Brooks a file marked cell tower records. She opened it, scanning rows of time stamps and locations. The pings placed Marcus's phone nowhere near the lounge, where he claimed to be. Sean, the computer forensics investigator, showed Brooks into his office. On the monitor, encrypted files began unfurling. Numbers, transfers, debts. Among them, an unsent email resurfaced. Subject line: Fraud alert. Marcus Hill's name threaded throughout the attachment. Brooks weighed the tower records against the digital evidence. Patterns, when doubled, either fracture or confirm. Here they converged. Claire Merritt had left her voice behind, not in whispers, but in proof too stubborn to vanish. The hum of the computer filled the room, steady and relentless. Silence had given way to testimony. Testimony to records, records to code. And together, they spoke louder than any polished alibi ever could. On the street, Marcus's stride faltered under the weight of the cuffs. The evening air pressed close, gray and unyielding. Passersby slowed, eyes catching the scene, whispers rising, curiosity sharpening. Marcus tried to hold his posture, but each step bent beneath the weight of inevitability. The city did not pause for him. Cars passed, rain collected in gutters, and the clock somewhere inside the precinct ticked on. Time, patient as always, had caught him. In the interrogation room, Brooks laid evidence piece by piece: phone logs, decrypted files, testimony aligned. Each one tightened the walls around him. Marcus's smile cracked, his composure slipping like glass under strain. He shifted in his chair, eyes darting towards the lawyer who no longer spoke with confidence. Confidence pretends to be armor, but once bent, it collapses under its own weight. Marcus Hill had built his defense on polish alone, and polish cannot bear pressure. The silence after each piece of evidence grew heavier, pressing closer until his words were fractured into fragments. Brooks remained calm, her voice measured, her patience unshaken. The case no longer belonged to Marcus Hill. It belonged to time, and time has already spoken. Marcus Hill no longer carried swagger, his posture bent, his wrist bound, his silence heavy. Brooks followed stride, measured, expression calm. Some men believed they could bend time to their will, but time never forgot what it witnessed. For Brooks, triumph was never glory. It was patience, the refusal to let silence win. The clock filled the frame once more, its second hand caught mid-tick, steady as ever. Time always tells, though not always the truth. Tonight, one alibi slipped through the seconds and vanished. But the city keeps its secrets, and next week, another case unfolds.